So I think the main message I'm trying to communicate at this particular point in time in history is that it's very important for educators, wherever they may be, to really think about what their deepest moral purposes are with the profession. We have an awesome responsibility to educate a rising generation. We need to make sure we don't get too obsessed on single points of data, that we help our young people to grow in confidence with their engagement with the natural world, with people from other cultures, different languages, different backgrounds, and that we can help to provide educations that help our young people to find a meaning and purpose in their lives. So in many ways, I think I'm revisiting many perennial themes in the history and the philosophy of education, but really trying to bring them up for an age of technological acceleration, political polarization, and climate change. So it's a great question to ask what learning will look like in schools in the future. A current slogan that's going around a lot has to do with the personalization of learning and individualized learning. I think that this is becoming a frightening development because we're never hearing anything about the socialization purposes of learning. So children have to learn how to share, how to develop compassion, how to develop courage, how to be a real friend. And children need to become members of cultures, and they can get their culture through school in regards to their language, their literary heritage, their environmental location, all of these different things. So there's lots of good things that happen in schools when they bring together diverse populations of young people and help them to learn. Every now and then a really peppy, upbeat lecture has a role. Student-initiated projects can certainly be very important. Using technology when it's appropriate can be a very powerful tool for helping young people to learn. And also, I would like to see more in schools of vigorous physical activity, so young people learning skills around things like rock climbing or kayaking, that then will get them not just into the local gym, but also out into the natural world, so that we learn to treat our environment with more respect and an ethic of care, not just for our lives, but for future generations. So the question about what can we do to support individual students and individual teachers at a societal level is one of the most important questions that I think we can be asking today. So one of the things that political leaders can do, or leaders in any sector, is to convey enormous respect for human beings, the human condition, the human aspiration to learn, the aspiration to improve oneself and make a contribution to one's family, friend, and societies. That's a first thing that can be done. In our schools, we can probably do a lot with two different things that need to happen at the same time. One of the things I think is to listen to our students and to engage them in deep, profound conversations, where we're not just asking their opinion for what they might want to do with a lesson that uses Facebook as a tool, but we're really asking them about how they imagine a good life for themselves and the contributions they might want to make to the world. So on the one hand, we could explore a lot more with deep, probing, mindful dialogue with our students. The second thing I think that we can do in the profession is to make sure that we really have an impeccable professional knowledge base. So if students ask us a question about something, we're not just hedging on that, but we actually know it inside out. We know it really well, and we can convey our own expertise and our own passion for that subject. And there I would just tell a little story of a teacher who changed my life. I was in high school, and a teacher let me do an independent study in literature, and I chose to read Herman Melville's Moby Dick. I read the whole book. I got to the end of it, it was okay. And then I met with my teacher in this wonderful independent study environment, which happened in a traditional public school. So there was a teacher who took some initiative and let me do some free reading. And she said, "Dennis, are you ready to discuss how you'll get started reading Moby Dick?" And I said, "Mrs. Alexander, I've already read the whole thing." And she said, "Oh, that's good. What's the first sentence?" And I said, "It's call me Ishmael." And she said, "Excellent. Now, do you know who Ishmael was in the Bible?" Now, I didn't know the answer to the question, and if you don't know the answer to that question, you don't understand the whole book, because Ishmael in the Bible is a son who is outcast by his father, with his mother, who was basically the slave concubine of the father. And Old Testament says that Ishmael's hand was raised against every man, and every man's hand was raised against him. So he's the alienated, angry son. We have a lot of those in the world today. Think of that. Think of that. Alienated, angry young men. And I was one of those when I read that book. But then Ishmael also means, in ancient Hebrew, it means God hears. Now you can interpret that religiously. You could also interpret that as one of the greatest gifts that we can give each other is to listen to where the other person's coming from. But the key thing here is I would have missed the whole point of that book if I had not had the biblical reference. So what a teacher can do in a situation like that is, first of all, she can reach out and give students opportunities to do some independent reading or some independent self-initiated activities. And second, when the students miss the point of the whole thing, a good teacher can kick the trap door open that takes you from the superficial level all the way down to the depth. I could go very, very long on how that experience changed my life. Just one teacher. One teacher. She was short. She had a big beehive hairdo, kind of Dolly Parton style, and a thick Southern accent. So, you don't kind of have to be some pedagogical Einstein, but you have to do two things. Listen to the students and really know your content knowledge. I hope that will be more in the schools of the future. So when we ask about passion and knowledge base in education, I think we're exploring really important questions. I don't agree with Sir Ken Robinson, who has written many books about the element, which is simply helping young people to find their passion and then letting them do that. I think that is extremely short-sighted and dangerous. If I had been allowed to do that when I was in high school, I would have always wanted to study the romantic interest that I had at the moment. And I don't know that I would have wanted to study really unpleasant things like the slave trade or the Holocaust. I don't know that I would have wanted to go deep into those things. So I think if we're serious about preparing citizens, we don't get lost in the fashion of the moment, which is indulging in our passions. Sir Ken Robinson gives many good examples of musicians and artists where things went really well for them when they pursued their passion. But you could think Jim Morrison of the Doors, you could think Jimi Hendrix, you could think Janis Joplin, you could think how a lot of artists pursue their passions. But passio in Latin means suffering. People speak of the passion of Christ. Now, so if you do want to speak about passion, then be honest with the public and say, you can chase your passion, but it's going to take something out of you. And it's not just going to all be fun. So one of the things that we really have to do is, I think, be honest about what passion entails. And I guess what I would say is, in the US context, we are heavy on passion and weak on content knowledge and weak on developing a powerful, persuasive, rational argument. One of the things I worry about sometimes with my keynotes is people say, that's great, it was so passionate. But it can only be passionate because I've spent years trying to develop the arguments. And in this way, I'm quite Germanic, if I could say this. I think that what Immanuel Kant and other leaders of the German Enlightenment were trying to say is, you have a germ of something very special in you, and it's called your reason. But you won't be able to develop your reason on your own. You have to develop your reason through a lot of hard work, through a lot of solitary study, and then by having spirited debates with other people who can challenge you. And if you just want to be in a safe environment where nobody challenges you, you're setting yourself up for a very bad fall, because you won't be able to persuade other people who think differently than you, and you'll probably find yourself in a quite vulnerable position as a consequence. Instead, we have to have the courage to engage with others. So finding a way to combine passion and developing reason is, I think, something extremely important to do. And maybe in some environments they could do with a bit more passion, and some environments could do with a bit more of the rationality. I don't have a final answer. for those questions. We have to explore this as a collective profession. So the question is there enough passion in Germany? So in my new book, The New Imperatives of Educational Change, I have a chapter on Germany. And I think right now at this particular moment in history, so I'm speaking in September 2017, I would say about Germany what Bono said about Canada. Bono said, the world needs more Canada. And I think right now the world needs more Germany, because I think that Germany, in a very courageous way, has faced up to its past and has faced up to the dangers of nationalism, the dangers of militarism, the dangers of thinking that any one country should be first over others. And this is a message which we need to hear in many different contexts, I would say, including my own. So world history changes. That's something that we have to understand. It may be a good thing that in Germany people check their emotions, because emotions can get caught up with charismatic leadership, and that can be a rather dangerous thing. So finding the right balance of rationality and emotional engagement is probably one of the big challenges for all countries right now. Charisma, there's the charisma of Gandhi, which was magnificent, and then there's other kinds of charisma which are quite frightening. So what does this mean? It means we have to think our way through this. We have to talk with each other. We have to discuss these issues with colleagues far and wide. And I think our students want to have these conversations. I think we are seriously underestimating the desire of our students to live lives of meaning and purpose, and that we can do that in many, many different ways. During instruction, when students are passing between classes, if you're watching students playing a game after school or waiting for a bus, there's all these venues to communicate and to listen to what our students are thinking about. And that's part of the richness of the profession, is the ability to kind of try and take something from Buddhism, which is strip away all the assumptions that we have and go to a very basic level of simply listening and being open-minded to what others have to contribute.